Yourself, Jose. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Loan Officer Training Series with the Mortgage Calculator. Tonight we're going to be talking about how to structure ITIN borrower loans. Give us just a moment here to go live on all the different platforms. We got the chat up on the screen. I see some comments already coming in there. Definitely appreciate it. Great topic here to get into tonight. And it looks like we're live on all the platforms, so we'll go ahead and get started. What we'll do is we'll take the chat off the screen for now, but go ahead and you can keep dropping comments there in the chat. You can also drop any questions you have in the chat as we go through the presentation, and Jose would be happy to answer them after we go through it here. So we'll go ahead and get us started. So welcome everyone. My name is Kyle Hershey. I'm the COO of the Mortgage Calculator, joined here by our president Nick Hershey and our CSO Jose Gonzalez. We are a lender that specializes in non-QM loans, and what we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern on this show is a new loan officer training topic. And tonight we're going to be talking about how to structure ITIN borrower loans. So I'll let Jose go ahead and get into the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's training on ITIN borrower loans, right? It's a very interesting training, and it is a very hot segment of secondary, right? Where there's a lot of action, and when there's more action in secondary, that means that we're going to have more product offerings, better guidelines, better rates, right? ITIN borrowers, ITIN, DSCR, bank statement loans, those are very popular segments right now in secondary and non-QM. If you aren't looking into adding ITIN borrowers to your portfolio of lending, then you're leaving money on the table. But it is important to know what exactly is an ITIN borrower, because a lot of times they are confused with foreign national borrowers, because as you see there from the photo of our ITIN borrower, they are usually going to be at one point or another have originated from a foreign country, right? As you can see him there. But the difference is that the ITIN borrower, as I want to get into the presentation, lives permanently in the United States, versus the foreign national borrower that may not live permanently in the United States. They definitely do not have but neither share status, any legal full-time residency status in the U.S. The difference is that one lives in the U.S., works in the U.S., and the other one, the foreign national, does not. So before I spill all the beans now, let me break it down for you like I always do. What is an ITIN? ITIN stands for Individual Taxpayer Identification Number, even though many times we will ask for the ITIN number, but really all we got to ask for is the ITIN, just like we may be talking about DSCR and ask what's the DSCR ratio, when DSCR actually means debt service coverage ratio. We tend to do that a lot, right, in the industry. Now, very important to note that an ITIN document, card, whatever they may hold, is not a substitute for a Social Security number or a Social Security card. Two totally separate numbers that allow two totally separate functions. And ITIN is only available to individuals with a foreign or alien status. And the reason that those individuals with a foreign and alien status need the ITIN is because it helps these individuals comply with U.S. tax laws and submit income tax returns when they are required, right? If they have self-employment income, somebody's reporting a 1099 for them, or they may be self-employed, right? And they want to file, their income for their self-employment. The ITIN allows them to file with the ITIN. Now, please note that just because the borrower has a valid ITIN does not mean that they are authorized to legally work in the United States via the form of W-2 employment. They may be working in the U.S., deriving income in the U.S., but it is not going to be W-2 employment unless they have a social security number and not an ITIN. If you have an ITIN borrower that gives you W-2s, look at the W-2 document to make sure that the tax ID number there is actually their ITIN and not somebody else's social security number. Be aware also that an ITIN it's a 9-digit number, and it begins with a number 9. So what exactly is an ITIN borrower? Well, you heard me briefly mentioning to it at the beginning of the presentation. An ITIN borrower is a borrower who derives their income solely within the U.S. Whatever other action they have going on outside the U.S. is not possible to use unless they're actually claiming that income in a U.S. tax return. This ITIN borrower also lives full-time in the U.S. They are here. This is where they live. This is where they work. This is where they have their credit, because the ITIN borrower also needs to have U.S.-based credit and meet the credit requirements for the selected program, whatever that may be, right? Whatever the minimum credit score for the program, whatever the trade line requirements are for that particular ITIN program, because remember, it's non-QM. All the guidelines are going to be different. They're all going to have a different matrix for credit as well, and LTVs. As mentioned also previously, do not confuse an ITIN borrower with a foreign national borrower that does not have to live full-time in the U.S., does not have to derive their income from the U.S., and does not need to have U.S.-based credit. That last one is, unless you pick an option that actually requires them to have U.S.-based credit, which I think there is a couple of random investors out there that when they publish a credit score, it has to be based on U.S.-based credit. But I would say 99.99% of the options out there do not require foreign nationals to have U.S.-based credit. But you see, foreign nationals, totally the opposite of ITIN regarding what one needs to have and the other doesn't. The only the only attribute that they share is the fact that neither has legal status in the U.S. to reside permanently in the U.S. That's why the ITIN borrower has the ITIN document. So, talking about documents, and I'm going to get into this a little bit on our last slide when I look at a couple sample guidelines, but talking about documents now, right? What are the document requirements? Well, document requirements are an unexpired ITIN. But again, when we look at the guidelines on the last slide, you're going to see the workarounds for that. U.S.-based credit, meeting the program guidelines chosen. I just touched on that. Now, here's the one that tends to affect ITIN borrowers the most. Valid, unexpired picture ID. It could be a driver's license from the U.S., driver's license from their country of origin, or a passport from their country of origin. But it has to be unexpired, and it has to be, for example, if it's a driver's license, it has to be like a federally issued or state issued from their country, or if it's U.S., same. It has to be state or federal picture ID. Or the passport would work as well from their country of origin. Now, this, again, sometimes the borrower that does not have legal status, depending on where they live, may have difficulties in obtaining some type of a federal or state picture ID if they don't have one that's unexpired to begin with. So keep that in mind when interviewing your borrowers. Again, the ID could be from the U.S. or it could be from their country of origin. Make note that depending on the guidelines that you're considering, the borrower may have to provide documents showing their initial entry into the U.S. right? I think they call that an I-594, right? Whatever the document is, you look at the guidelines and it'll state if you have to provide that document or not. So make sure you review the guidelines for any immigration type documents that may need to be provided showing when they legally enter the country. Now, depending on the income type, right? Depending if you're going full doc or bank statement, P&L, 1099, or DSCR, because we have all of those income types for ITIN borrowers. I'll let you know. So depending on that is what income docs you're going to present or not have to present if it's DSCR, and it could be a 1 or 2 year option depending on the program selected. DTI is going to vary, DTI requirements anywhere from 43 to 50% depending on the option chosen, the ITIN option chosen, because again, like I always like to mention, all program guidelines are specific to the investor. So what are some of our loan options? Well, we got quite a few. You wouldn't think we have so many for ITIN, but we do. If you're looking at a primary residence, 85% is the maximum LTV for full doc bank statement or 1099. 80% maximum for a P&L. Those are a little bit more restrictive. And then on your cash outs, 80% is the best option, with 75% being the more restrictive option for the P&L option. Now, if it's a second home, as you would expect, LTVs are going to drop a little bit. So LTVs do drop for 5% on the full doc bank statement and 1099 option. The LTVs stay the same for the profit and loss option because it's already at 80 and 75%, which is lower than the other two to begin with. Investment properties, this is where we see some amazing improvements over what may have been available 6 months to a year ago. And actually in all of the ITIN categories, we see amazing improvements in higher LTVs and reduced guidelines, less strict. But in investment, especially full doc, we can go up to 80% purchase, 75% cash out. Look at the bank statement as well. 80% purchase, 75% cash out, and 1099s. Those are very amazing options there. Same for P&L, 80 and 75. And the mind blower as well, DSCR, 75% LTV on a purchase and 70% LTV on a cash out. All of these for our ITIN borrowers. So many options available for ITIN borrowers that were not at our disposal 12 months ago. And last but not least, I wanted to share with you here a couple of different excerpts from 2 different guidelines, just so that you can have an idea when reviewing guidelines, the kind of stuff to look for that's specific for ITIN, which is the stuff I was talking about, the IDs, right? And the ITIN, the actual ITIN documents. Because again, all guidelines are specific to the investor or lender chosen for the loan. So if we look at the first example on the top, it says what an ITIN borrower is, or a non-permanent resident alien without a Social Security number can qualify using an ITIN number. All it says on the top, borrower must possess valid ITIN card or IRS ITIN letter. Notice that they ask either the card or the letter and an unexpired photo ID. Right, driver's license, international passport, etc. So notice they want you to have the document, right? Gift funds allowed, power of attorney or RON, remote online organization, is not allowed. And it shows the different programs that they can do it basically under the one program that allows for alt doc and under the DSCR. What I really want you to notice in the one below, notice it says, all documentation and file must support the borrower's ITIN number and cannot reference a Social Security number belonging to another individual. And then it's stating evidence of unexpired ITIN can be accomplished as follows. Notice if it's a full doc file, whatever full doc we're talking about, self-employed borrower full doc or a 1099 borrower full doc, you just need current executed transcripts that are going to be pulled down from irs.gov with the ITIN, right? with that number and the borrower's information. If you can pull a transcript that's valid, that validates your ITIN. You don't have to show the actual card or a letter or anything like that in case whatever may be happening with that document. And if it's alt doc loan, provide one of the following: IRS letter dated less than 3 years ago that doesn't talk anything about expiration, fully executed W-7, including the agent's signature. That sounds like an immigration document. Letter from tax preparer confirming they have filed the borrower's most recent tax return with the IRS. Any of those three workarounds for an alt doc option, which would be bank statement, P&L, uh, would be acceptable. And then DSCR, obviously, um, I guess you would have to get also one of those other alt doc options as well as DSCR. So you see how looking at one guideline, they specifically want a hard copy of the document. I mean PDF, but PDF or whatever it is of the document. Versus if the borrower doesn't have the document on the second guidelines below, there's workarounds, and sometimes they lose the letter, they didn't get the letter, they just know it, the account is dealing with it, they don't have the letter. Well, you got to work around an option number two, and that's why it's so important in non-QM. When you're structuring your loan, there is no valid question. I mean, it's not a valid question if you say for ITIN loans, can you ... If you are a loan officer reaching out for guidance to your team leader or your mentor or sales manager, you want to state for an ITIN loan where I'm considering the guidelines for ABC investor, right? Would such scenario be possible? And hopefully you have a copy of the guidelines that you can share with your manager or whoever is reviewing the file with you, so that you can all go over those guidelines, review, and figure out what's the best course of action. So as you can see, ITIN, pretty simple loan, a lot of options for the borrowers, just certain basic requirements. Don't confuse them with a foreign national borrower. At the Mortgage Calculator, we have many ITIN options, as you can see, especially for ITIN investors that don't want to be left out of the mix. So look to the Mortgage Calculator for your ITIN borrower loans.
All right, thank you, Jose. I don't see any questions, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Remember that we do this at 7 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, where we go through a new loan officer training topic. So we will see you all tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the next episode.